Hello, you are winning with another episode of Epic Understanding. I am your host, Coach Love, and we have been talking about our youth this month, particularly focusing in on boys. It is amazing to me the great difference there is between boys and girls. For that reason, we are focusing our attention on boys and trying to figure out tonight how can we make our baby boys modern men. Emphasis on modern men. So I brought to you tonight some experts. My first expert tonight is Erica Driver. I don't just like her because her name is Erica. She's actually quite brilliant. Hello, Erica.
Hello, how are you doing?
I am fantastic. I am fantastic. Let me just brag on you a little bit. So, I saw a wonderful write up on you in your local paper, the St. Louis American, where you were being highlighted for your work in the community. So I just commend you on that, and you keep rocking and rolling, girl. Why don't you go ahead and tell us a little bit about how you're actually helping the youth, and then give us a tip on how to help us turn our baby boys into modern men.
Okay, well, I've worked in the community for over 20 plus years in after school programs, in school programs, administering evidence based, evidence informed curriculums to teach social emotional learning, health,
Mhm.
relationships, healthy communication skills, as well as sexual health. I currently work in the field of trying to break down the barriers to education that kids have before they even start
Mhm.
learning. So providing
Mm.
those basic needs that they need: shoes, coats, clothes, as well as, hey, Timmy can't see the school board. He can't learn.
Okay.
So working on those things. As it relates to the question about what do I think we need to help provide our young men to turn them from baby boys into men, is we need to teach emotional intelligence.
Ah,
Yes,
okay, okay,
emotional
okay,
intelligence, that your emotions, your feelings are valid, and that
okay,
it's okay to have them, but don't stay in them because that hampers your maturity.
okay. I like that. I'm going to actually ask you a follow-up question on that, but I have a very nice colleague of yours who happens to be an expert on emotional intelligence. Dr. Lay, how you doing?
Hello, hello. What's going on, Erica's? Both.
Well, she's fine. She's backstage, and she
Yeah.
landed us at the area of emotional intelligence, and that's
Okay.
actually
Yep.
your wheelhouse, right?
Yes. Yes. So, and I'm glad that she mentioned that to be our biggest hurdle that we have to look
Mhm.
at for our young boys. And with emotional intelligence, and I think the best way to summing up that is looking at, or at least teaching them to do more of what they know and not what they feel. Respect your feelings, but don't give them power, right? And so, giving them power just means basically acting on those emotions when those emotions are negative, because they're going to have a second and third order effect. And oftentimes, young boys, young girls, whoever, when we do that, we start to create our own belief systems about how we respond to things. And so
Mhm.
we have to keep in mind that even with children, when we're talking to our kids, is when we use belief systems as our, I think, our stepping stool for educating individuals on how they respond to things, how they react to certain situations, external situations. They're looking to validate those beliefs, right? And so if the belief is I'm hurt, belief is, and I can't express that, I can't talk that through, they're going to usually act it out, right?
Mhm.
And so I usually tell my boys, especially my teenagers, is what you suppress is going to come out in behavior. I'm going to see exactly what it is you're feeling, and we're going to talk
Oh my
about that,
goodness.
and we're going to process that,
So
but
what
what
happens
Mhm.
is we end up talking about the behavior instead of talking about the emotion behind the behavior.
Exactly, they when
Mm.
they're not expressing that, when they don't have that vocabulary. That's why part of my empathy training, the first module is establishing an emotional vocabulary. It's because you
Mhm.
want to use the right words to say what's on your mind versus acting them out. And so when I run them through the steps as far as why did you respond that way, or why did you react that way, and why was that a trigger for you? How did you hold on to that? How did you give it power? And once they start to break that down, there's a delay, but after a while they get used to these questions and they're like, okay, he's wanting me to process this and talk this out. So the emotional intelligence aspect of it is very, very good. But I will also add empathy as well, and having the ability to understand a fellow man or their peers as a whole. So I definitely would add on empathy with that.
Very interesting. So, one of the ways boys act out is sexual conquest. I'm going to let you think on that question, but I want you to help us understand, what are boys trying to say when they are just expressing themselves sexually, but without any attachment to that. But that's kind of a deep question, so I'm going to let you think about that.
Yes.
Well, it's epic understanding. Let's get deep. Anyway, someone who's no stranger to boys acting out in a physical way, but you help them do that in a positive manner, is Terrence. I'm having a little trouble with my own navigation, but I think I'm going to work on it. Just a minute here. Here we go. Hi, Terrence.
Hello.
How you doing?
Oh, I'm doing well. How are you?
Pretty good. Now that I got my little finger happy self together, in my production. Now, you're a guy who works out, and so you understand the physical nature of putting an action to your emotion. But I'm really interested in your organization and what that's all about, and how you help turn our baby boys into modern men.
Well, first of all, thank you for having me on. I work for an organization called Anybody Can Youth Foundation, and we call it a boxing gym with a learning lab in the middle of it. So
Okay.
we do a little bit of everything. But to your point, that physical component is very important. And as I heard the other speakers talk, the thing that came to my mind that's really present and very relevant to what we do is it's modeling. It's having
Okay.
people that look like our boys and girls doing
Mm-hmm.
things the way that we want them to do it. So
Okay.
our technical term is scaffolding, meaning they learn a little bit and we praise them for doing it a little bit. We do it with babies all the time. And I tell my
Okay.
parents, we talk to babies and they can't understand us, but when they become teenagers, I'm not talking to them, then I'll listen to me. Well, why you stop talking to them now? They didn't listen to you when you're a baby. Keep talking to them. So one of the things we really emphasizes that whole idea of modeling, meaning we're going to show you what it looks like. We're going to walk you through it. We're going to show you step 1 through step 100, and we'll show it to you 100 times. And every time you come in, somebody's going to shake your hand, give you a fist bump, look you in the eye, ask you how your day is. And if it's that little bit that just gets you connected to somebody, because that
Mm-hmm.
is the key to me, is a connection. Everyone or anyone that's played any athletic sport, the connection that you have with your coach and your teammates is a very strong bond, and that will get you through a lot of things. And so
Okay.
we emphasize that, and we use that to our advantage and to their advantage, because those are the types of connections we want them to have.
So, do you believe that the boxing being physical makes a difference in their ability to express themselves?
I do. I'm a pro athletic competitive person by nature.
Hmm.
I come from a family of competitive people, the youngest of 4 boys, so I had to compete to eat. Um,
You had to compete to eat.
Yeah, so that was just my nature. But I think the physical component of it, be it boxing, be it wrestling, be it basketball, softball, swimming, anything with that competitive nature to it, allows you to express those emotions in a positive way, because you're going to be disappointed, because you're not going to win everything. You're going to lose
Mhm.
sometimes. You're going to be tired. You're not going to want to do something. You're going to be angry because somebody's telling you to do something you don't want to do. You're going to be
Mm.
upset because you got to get up and go to practice 3 times a day when your friends are sleeping in bed and they don't have to get up. So all these emotions, you get to learn them and learn how to deal with them in a positive way and have a way to express them. I used to tell people that I was colorblind. And like, what do you mean you're colorblind? You can tell the colors. I'm like, yeah, I can tell the colors, but I know pink, red, blue, yellow. I don't know fuchsia and violet and indigo green and wavy blue. It's
You
just
said wavy blue. Oh Lord.
don't ask me what all that is. It's just blue, red, green, pink. All that
I
other
think you're wearing wavy blue right now. Good
see,
Lord.
there you go. See,
Well,
somebody's
let
gonna
me.
get that later, so I'll just take my cut down the road. But
Okay.
that's my
Fair.
point. Letting them learn that information and learning those words, as Dr. Lay said.
Okay. Speaking of Dr. Lay, I asked you a question just a little bit ago. I'm very curious about your answer. And it is, what emotion are boys trying to express when they act out sexually?
So help me with this too. When you say act out,
Mm-hmm.
right? Is this out of curiosity? Is this out of shame? Is this modeled behavior? Like what age are we
Mm-hmm.
really talking about?
Mm-hmm.
Because it is different
I would say
stages.
10 to 14.
Oh, okay. So 10. So what we do know, or at least in literature that I've read, that children, boys, let's look at boys for a minute, right? They generally become interested in sexual matters around the age of 7.
Mm-hmm.
Experimental stages is around 8. They start to increase their sexual vocabulary around 9.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I guess when you get to 10, girls typically hit puberty before boys by the age of 10, but they start to show a greater interest at that stage. Now, what we see in the modern world today is that access to information is totally different than when I was 10.
Mm-hmm.
They have, they have way more access to information. And so I guess when it comes to teachers or parents or even myself, when we know that this type of conversation is not usually talked about in a household. It's usually ignored. Even when it's seen and observed by parents, they typically ignore it, thinking, "Oh, they're going to grow out of it."
Mm-hmm.
However, um, the biggest thing I can relate that to, and this is really in line um, with what the other gentleman said as well, is looking at what are their interests, how distracted they are, or how busy they are, or how bored they are,
Mm-hmm.
and the group that they typically hang around. What is the talk? What is the conversation? Again, 10 years old, puberty, exploration, and access to information. I mean, you're
Mm-hmm.
dealing with a lot of different weapons, right? And so, I would say that if, and we can get into the other side of the house when it's disrupted, right? When a child is introduced to that way too early. Okay, now understand, 6 years old, boys are not even interested in that. Okay, they're not even um, uh, thinking about that. And so to see that type of behavior, usually one would start to wonder who's influencing that,
Mm-hmm.
where are they learning that from? So, but at 10 years old, can we say and agree, I guess, across the panel that this is kind of normal to explore?
Mm-hmm.
But to act out makes it sound like it's a reaction to something
Well,
versus.
see, I'm wondering,
Mhm,
because children are beginning to explore sexually earlier and earlier, um, these days. And so I'm very curious about that. And even if I push the age up some, and to say that they're having sex for pleasure, um, it still seems ill-focused to me. Erica,
Mm-hmm.
what is your feedback? Maybe let's put the age range in a place where it might be a sign of some kind of emotion, some kind of behavior. I'm sorry, some kind of connection um, issue, because I think sometimes when someone cannot control other things, they say that I can control myself sexually.
I concur with that slightly. After teaching about 10 years of sexual health education to
Mhm.
educators in St. Louis, Mississippi, and Milwaukee, the conversation about sex, and it's more about curiosity.
Okay.
And it's not, we say, you're saying acting out. I think of, is it sexual deviant behavior
Mhm.
where they're aggressive, rape, those type of behaviors, or you're saying sexually interested? Because I'm
Mhm.
agreeing with Dr. Lay's comment about that they're interested in sex. And so
Mhm.
that's an easy thing for them to express or engage in, because girls are actually more aggressive now as it
Mhm.
relates to the conversation and the act of sex.
Mhm.
Girls tend to look at providing oral sex as almost as common as a kiss.
Mhm. Mhm.
So when you have that access to girls performing oral sex as if it's the equivalent of a kiss, boys are more likely to behave or engage in that behavior more, I guess you could say, often than normally would be expected for boys ages 10 to 14. In the curriculums I taught, we focus more on teaching them about themselves first and
Mhm.
self-efficacy before we moved into what the sexual act is and how to protect themselves and their partner. Because
Mhm.
a lot of these kids, they don't even know their own anatomy. And so a lot of times they do things out of that curiosity, not realizing the consequences attached to it. And we say the least of your consequences is that the girl ends up pregnant or you end up a parent. The worst is that you could end up with an STD that keeps on giving.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
especially for that 10 to 14-year-old population, I know in our region for about 7 years, they were the highest rate for gonorrhea, chlamydia, and syphilis, that 10 to 14-year-olds. So when you
Mhm.
talk 10 to 14-year-olds are the ones that are transmitting sexually transmitted diseases, and some of them are now not responding to the previous course of medicine.
Mm.
Yeah, so some of them are getting that gift that stuck with them that normally would have responded to medicine and it's gone. We've got to start to think about how we are teaching our boys to respond to sex and also the conversation around sex. We need to stop making it taboo.
Mhm.
A lot of people believe that you should not educate people about sex. You should educate them so they can make an informed decision. We all have the ability to make choices.
And so this is why I say acting out, because, and I'm not saying girls don't act out. It's just that we happen to be focusing on boys. It seems to be that this sexual expression is becoming part of identity, part of uh, you know who they are in defining themselves. Terrence, what's your thought on that?
And that's kind of where I was going when you kind of brought up the topic when you said the whole identity part. I think at those ages, going up until their late teens, that whole identity and self confidence and self awareness portion of it is, I think, a big part of it. Them, and I think part of the component with the sexual education is the self education, meaning learning how to know who you are and be confident in who you are without needing to fill that gap or hole without using any type of innuendo that I realized I just did with something else. Uh, but the idea is to get them to find ways to take care of themselves, to express those emotions in positive ways, and to know who they are without needing that form of venting or that form of acting out, as you would say it. I would term it as a way of the building their self-esteem or building their identity or building their credibility with their peer group by using these types of things, sex, as opposed to getting to know themselves and being comfortable with themselves, and whether their peer group is doing it or not, they make that decision based on their situation and what they want to do rather than what everybody else is doing.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I like that. I like that. So certainly we have to address esteem. Okay, we have to address identity. What else do we need to address, Dr. Lay?
So one of the things that I do want to point out too, and kind of go back on, is when we look at statistics as far as the acting out with any type of sexual aggression or behavior, one of the things that I remember looking through when I was doing a little research on it is the fact that 1 out of 3 young girls before the age of 8 are touched, right? And when we start to see what happens in this behavior when something like that happens, and then they start to mimic that behavior, or they start to, that curiosity becomes sooner rather than later. The studies also show, like I mentioned earlier, at 10 years old, girls are more um, sexually interested, I guess you would say, than 10-year-old boys, right? And so I think one of the things that we have to address too is, where's the peer pressure coming from for boys? When it's actually being communicated in a lot, whether it's around their friends or things of that nature, who's talking about it, who's making it more of a taboo versus a normalized type conversation or whatever have you. And I think that that is something, I mean, we can't skip over that. I think that's something that we still have to bring into the mix as well, is that who's, um, you know, what's being introduced, what's being talked about at an earlier stage, and what then elevates to okay, this curiosity is now turning into my way of feeling good, my way of getting the attention that I want, my way of joining the conversation, and again, this is looking at the peer pressure side of the house. So I just wanted to touch on that though before answering the question that you asked here.
Okay, I think now is a good time for a tip, because Steve here has brought up an excellent point. Males are not told to value their bodies in the same way that girls are told to value their bodies. Erica is like shaking her head. What's going on with the shaking of the head?
I'm concurring that no, we don't. We do promise rings for girls. They have promise rings from their fathers. Where girls are taught that your virginity is key to make sure that you're a virgin on your wedding night. Those are things that women are taught. We do not have the conversation about men and their sexual purity and their sexuality and making it pure for themselves. We don't have that conversation. We almost, the masculine, sorry, not the masculine, the toxic masculinity is extremely evident when it comes to the conversation regarding early sexuality and sexual activity.
Sexual conquest. That's so 3 pillars that men are judged on: provide, protect, sexual conquest. So the more you've had of it as a man, then the more masculine somehow you are. And I honestly think it's the opposite. When a boy has sex very young, um, I I think it's unhealthy for him. I don't think that's the best thing for him to be doing.
Right. That's true.
Neither
Oh,
gender.
well, I got a yes. Okay.
Yeah, I agree with that, definitely. Yeah.
So I want to hear actually from Terrence, because you're the person who is touching fellas every day in a very physical way. Are you teaching them to value their bodies? Are you even having that conversation with them? What's happening?
I think the way that we approach that is through physical fitness. It's kind of it's not a direct conversation, but it is part of the process, because if you are uh, someone who does something that is physical fit, that is strenuous, that you're taking care of yourself and taking care of your body, the holistic approach is you're taking care of your mind, body, and soul. And as we approach that conversation through uh, discussions of everything from the nuclear family to what is the process as you grow up, and what do you want to be and what do you want to do. So it's multifaceted, and it does come up. We've had conversations where, and most of our conversations on those types of things are generic, meaning they just pop up. And one of the things our president always says is, you never know what's going to come through the door, because somebody will come through the door and the conversation will be, my girlfriend's pregnant, I don't know what to do, to, you know, my mom's having another baby, and now I got a little brother I got to deal with. I mean, these things it's not on my bingo card, but okay, this is what we're talking about today, and this is a boxing gym. But so our thing is really focused on the physical, but we always say we talk about the physical, mental, and spiritual, because there's a holistic approach to everybody that walks through the door. And so that is the way that we kind of approach that. One of the things I did want to mention, though, is the elephant in the room that we didn't mention is kind of the media, though. They're bombarded with media, from everything from music to videos to pornography to magazines. So that component is also has a part to play, which I think what we do to deal with that is the self-confidence part, is the discussions part, is the making sure that they value themselves enough to know that there is, just because you see that act being done on whatever screen you're watching, that doesn't mean that that is what you think love is. This is what love is. And love is something that is to be shared, that is to be pure, that is to be valued. And if that doesn't match what your definition is, and I'm not going to give you a definition, I'll tell you what mine is, but you have to develop your own and then compare and contrast.
Okay, so Erica, you deal with this in the way of curriculum. I mean, you are sitting down and being very specific with girls and boys.
So we focus on not only teaching about the subject matter. So we're talking about all of things: adolescence, sex, protecting yourself, pregnancy, HIV. But we're also talking about kids developing refusal skills and refusal tactics and delay tactics. We're also getting them to practice those. And some of them are extremely uncomfortable, because sitting there, and we've even taught kids like, hey, the one tactic will always get you out of the difficult situation. Hey, wait, I think my mama calling me. I got to go. That is the all killer that will kill a, like, oh yeah, I don't want your mama to be mad at me. Let me go. That will get kids out of any situation. We've taught them that. But as Terrence was saying earlier, social media is key, because during my work, I ask kids, let me see your social media. What pages are you looking at? And I tell you, it is a free all porn. It is. Even when we do surveys for kids about their sexual activity, their knowledge and everything, they would educate us. Staff, we would come back and we would have very vivid conversations about subject matters that teens, preteens, we taught 6th grade to 12th grade. So we had the full gamut. And we would have vivid conversations about things that they were bringing up. We're like, hey, you know about that? I know about that. So it was an education for us, but we're like, where are they getting this that we adults don't know about it?
Okay, so a mistake that parents are making, number one, is that they're not talking about the sex. Sex. The next mistake that parents are making that I'm hearing is that they're not teaching the boys to value themselves as much as they are the girls, value their physical body. Okay, that's the next one that I'm hearing. Am I also hearing a lack of preparation with self-esteem? Am I getting that right? Dr. Lay, what do we have going on here?
I'm always hitting my mic because I don't want to hit it. I don't want the pineapple there. But let me tell you. So when we talk about self-esteem, I think let's wrap though, right? We're gonna be real about this, right? Okay. So I think when we talk about self-esteem of men, I mean, men can only do, girls, grown men can only, young boys, grown men can only do what women allow, right? That's first and foremost.
I gotta hit buzz, stop, pause. Absolutely not.
Wait, did I? Oh, me? No.
Yes. Where my bell at?
No. Let's politic this, right? We can. Come on. We can do this, right? We can do this, right? Terrence, do not leave me hanging. What I'm saying is, who controls access to what is what I'm saying. Now, we know there are outliers, okay? And we know what that is, okay? Great. We understand. But That's an outlier. We're talking about the majority. Who controls access to it? That's first and foremost. Two, when we talk about when boys are actually starting, there was a recent study, you can look this up, anybody that's viewing can look this up, that men before the age of 20, there's a higher percentage of men not having sex and still being virgins than there are women. That's by 20. By 30, it jumps even higher. Okay? So you have to look at exactly, all right, who are we talking about here, right? Now, you mentioned 3 characteristics, right? You said, and correct me if I'm wrong, guys, but you said about boys who they're intimate with, who they can provide and protect, right? Something like that, to that nature, right? Am I right about that? That you mentioned earlier? I get that,
Kinda.
right? I get that, and that is true.
Provide, protect, sexual conquest.
Right? Sexual conquest. Now, the key word there was conquest, right? So that's who allows, right? Who they conquer or whatever have you. But when we talk about the self-esteem aspect, the studies show that boys literally have more self-esteem issues going into adulthood than women do. Right? So they are opting out of having sex. They're opting out because they're fearful of the rejection. They don't want the rejection. So what do they result to? You got to understand that same impulse that is triggered with sex is usually triggered with video gaming and pornography. Anime pornography more than anything. Okay?
So this is the whole. So you went all of that. It's still a definition in their mind. Sexual conquest. It's not whether or not they're having it. It is the definition in their mind that is affecting their masculinity. Let me ring my bell at you again.
But Erica.
Hold on. But Chantel, she makes this point. She said pornography is even embedded in their video games now. So the point is, whether you're having sex or not having sex, it's still a part of your mindset. And it messes with your identity. So whether you're actually having sex or lying about having sex, your identity is still attached to this idea of sexual conquest. And the only reason I say sexual conquest is that's because it's in the male identity and lexicon, not because that's what we want them to be defined by.
And I think I'll further, if I can explain a little bit, when you use the word conquest, it is not a literal caveman conquest. It is a conquest of achievement.
Yes. Yeah. It's almost like scoring a touchdown.
There you go. Yes.
It's almost like scoring a touchdown. So, in my mind, I'm, the boys lie in the locker room about who they did it with. They might have not ever touched anybody, but they're lying so that can be a part of the gang, a part of the crew.
And that type of line of either lying or reality affects their belief system, which down the road affects their behavior, which is where we are.
Exactly.
But we do understand belief systems as the belief system is only strong if you act. So the behavior is very important here. If you take a Christian, right? This person says that they are a Christian, right? They're going to act. How do you validate that? They may pray, go to church, read the Bible, go to Bible study. They may, all their friends are Christians as well. They have all these behaviors to validate that belief. Regardless of what they're talking, that's peer pressure. That is, I want you off my back. So I'm going to talk that talk, if you will, right? We can't ignore statistics because the statistics are showing that, look, even if they're talking a good game, the act is not showing. It's not validating. So either way, we can't look at beliefs and not look at behavior. We have to associate beliefs with behavior because they got to validate that. But what you're seeing is that self-esteem issue. The lies, that's the behavior, right? They can start to believe that as much as they want. All that's going to do is build more insecurity. So what that does is that would make an individual, as they get older, they don't know how to communicate. They don't know how to establish a good rapport, healthy boundaries with women. They literally come off too forceful or not assertive enough, and then once that rejection happens, and I think that is where we start to look at a lot of um, uh, poor behaviors, just the rejection, just the fact that they are not approaching women with a level of respect, so it becomes more of a game like, right? So the talk is like a game. The people that they idolize are the people that they may look at. Terrence mentioned it as well as Erica as far as social media, right? So they look at these other individuals like, man, the way I'm doing it doesn't work. It doesn't get me the validation that I believe I should have, so I'm going to do it maybe their way. So it may turn into game like. It may turn into, I want to, play with this person's emotions. Let's see how much game I can run to conquer her or to get that attention from her. And therefore, yeah, they start not to respect not only themselves, but they also start to disrespect the individuals that are being impacted by that as well. But nonetheless, that belief and behavior, that has to go hand in hand. There's no belief without behavior. I mean, I think somebody mentioned Christ-like because that's just them thinking versus the act, the actual act of doing what they believe. And so yeah.
So, address this one for me. Sex is a surrogate for war. That's pretty powerful. Erica, you got your eyes all tuned up there. What's your thought?
Can you put it back up there?
Sex is a surrogate for war.
Sex is a surrogate for war. We want to show other men that we can get what they can't. It's competition in war. It's all about how many bodies they can bury. In sex, it's how much body they can bed. How many bodies you can bury? How many bodies can you bed? Touchdown.
Okay,
What do you think about that, guys? What are you thinking?
I'm not for that.
I could see where that ideology may come from, but I don't necessarily agree with it.
I'm not, what I'm trying to figure out is that the reality that is being lived. See, it doesn't have to go with our value system. We're not saying that's right or wrong. We're saying, is that evident in the culture?
Yeah. And I would say that there is a part of society that believes that is their prevailing thought, that's what they work under, the premise they work under. Now, what portion of society and men that is, I couldn't tell you, but I can say that, yes, I can understand that.
So how can we take this? Because we need another tip here,
Okay.
How can we extract this from our modern man? Because for me, I'm putting this up again, but this mindset, I think, is undermining a healthy stance on identity. As a matter of fact, quite honestly, I think this is sexual conquest manifested. This statement.
It is competition. I mean, certain things that men do and people do in general, but let's look at adults in this category here, right? That when guys are set out to, if they want to conquer, or they want to just sleep with how many people they can sleep with, or whatever have you, whether it's distraction, whether it's they have no purpose in life, and that's literally what they're focusing on is, hey, this is what I get most of my validation from, is the attention from women, or this is the biggest distraction because I can't focus my attention somewhere else. I mean, that is a learned behavior, right? So it will be an unlearning, and I think
that's what I'm asking. How can we?
It starts young. We have to commit young, right? Where we are with the kids now. But
it starts about that modeling behavior that Terrence talked about too.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be starting young, okay? And the more they practice,
what should we start young? What should we?
This
Terrence, what should we start young? What should parents do
You can
young
start
to break
as
this
young
cycle?
as you
Because
want with
listen,
self-confidence, because
okay,
self-confidence leads to all this. If that's, I used to have my babies look in a mirror and say affirmations, just because I wanted them to know, or I tell them how beautiful they were every single day, just because I want them to hear that. We tell our kids when they come through the door that they can be a champion because we want them to know that they can be successful. So those little things of making sure that their self-worth is valued and understood, and they have the language for it. I love when Dr. Lay says that teaching them the vocabulary of certain things. I think self-confidence has a vocabulary, meaning I need to know that if nobody else says anything nice to me, that there doesn't mean that I'm not nice. If nobody else says anything good to me, that doesn't mean that I can't do good things.
should we be straightforward in saying, listen, someone might try to tell you that it's a race to have sex, or it is, it's cool to have to bed a lot of women, but that doesn't really mean anything. It's a silly game that sometimes people play, but it's not good for you, and that's not something you should be doing. Should we be that direct?
Yes.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I
And
think we should. Yeah, of
And
course.
I
I mean,
think there are some of those conversations. I know coaches that have them. I know pastors that have those conversations that will tell young men flat out. I've had pastors tell me that exact conversation. So it's been said, and I just think that we don't we don't say it enough. It's not
Yep.
something that's the common conversation. It shouldn't be the outlier. It should be the norm.
Right,
yeah, and we can
because
say
I,
we.
I think the culture, you know what, culture rules. Whatever
Yeah.
culture is in the climate, uh, it is going to rule. It is why you think and do certain things. It is the thing that is on autopilot. Now, you can be of your neighborhood, or you can be in your neighborhood, and it's kind of like, what culture are you from? For me, I was of the culture of my household. I really didn't care what went on
Mhm.
outside of my household. The culture that was embedded in my head was the one of my family. Some people extract their culture from their environment, like their neighborhood. Some people
Okay.
extract their culture from their school. Some people it's their church. So it's an external community that they view themselves, that they get their identity from. Okay,
Right.
so whatever culture you're identifying with is going to be the basis for how you make your decisions. So I'm trying to figure out, what can parents do um, to make sure they are creating the culture on this self-esteem matter, on this identity matter, and for this purpose, masculinity.
And and
Have
Eric,
conversations with their children.
it's definitely conversations. We know that the new picture of what a family is now is totally different than what it was before, right? We definitely have way more single parent households, right? Single parent who are working full time, and therefore a lot of attention is not maybe taken away from the home. So much of that learning is coming from the environment, so you either a product or a victim of that environment a lot of the times, right? So that conversation does have to be had. They are, I believe, and Erica, you correct me if I'm wrong, they are normalizing sex education, it's not okay. I thought they were
You
normalizing that in
know,
school.
you've got a lot of school districts that are abstinence only districts. So they don't want to have the conversation about sex. They don't want you to mention sex and what sex is. They
Mhm.
are, some of them still, a lot of districts around the US still have their head buried in the sand. Even though they have 28 girls walking across the stage that are pregnant, they still
Mm.
have their head buried in the sand as relates to sexual health education.
Oh, that's
Because a
that's
lot of
unfortunate. I mean, that's definitely unfortunate. So it does have to start in the home.
Yeah.
Culture is important, but 70% of the time is spent in the home.
Yeah. Well, and I think a tip for parents as well as having that conversation, and is one of the things that they can control is there's certain environments you can control that you put your children into, and that could be any other extracurricular activity. That doesn't have to necessarily be a sport. It could be a club. It could be, but a self reinforcing positive environment that you can put them around people that are doing something. If it's an entrepreneurs club, if it's my son used to like the card game or whatever, so I found one of those for him, or gaming. There's certain things that you can control as a parent. We've had parents drop their kids off here going, he needs something, so I'm leaving him with you for an hour. Okay, bring him in. We'll take him.
He needs something. I don't know what it is.
That is amazing. That's amazing.
We'll take him. He can sit here, but he's going to be in an environment with people who are going to care about him, who's going to check on him, who are going to love him. And if that's the only time he gets it, at least he knows what it looks like. And that's what we're looking for.
Okay, I'm going to bring this comment back up, but I just want to say it sounds like another mistake. I think we're at 4. We might be at 5 already, but it's okay. But I'm going to call this 4. Mistake number 4 is allowing children to be completely idle. You know, when it's time for them to engage. I'm not saying you have to have your child do something every moment of the day, but it's different than, you know, don't have your child, or try not to have your child go home to an empty house from, 3 to 6.
It's the most dangerous time of the day.
Yeah, 3 and 6 is where teenage babies are made, or I should just say maybe adolescent babies, where a bad culture can get your child. The streets can get your child.
So that's more so looking at the boredom, right?
Well, yeah, where the child feels isolated, because I don't think it's just boredom. I think it's loneliness. I think it's, isolation. It is, I think children often need someone to say, good job. How was your day? Do you want some cold milk? Here's here's a cookie. Here's a hug. Whatever it is that, tops off their day, that makes them feel like they're worth something.
It matters.
And then go ahead, Erica.
I was gonna say it matters because where I work now, we have what we call mission moments. And one of those mission moments was we walked into a school and a young man was just having a bad day, just outright. And one of the staff said to him, "Hey, do you just need a hug?" And she said before she even finished a sentence, he was arms wrapped around her, hugging as tight for his life. And just in that moment, she was just like, okay, they had to leave and come back to that school later. And when she saw him, she was like, how's your day going? He said, so much better. So much better.
Oh my gosh.
Sometimes that intimate physical touch of saying you matter, it makes a world of a difference for our young people, and especially our young men, because we don't teach them to hug. We don't teach them to express emotion. If we do, it's usually through aggression or some other area that we're teaching them to do that, versus, hey, be intimate, have a real emotional conversation with someone else about your well-being, because someone else can sometimes help you heal or address what's going on with your life. Now you can act away.
No, I totally agree with that. And we see a lot of the studies that show, of course, when parents are active in a child's life, the chances of them having a more successful, more fulfilling teenage life, adult life is increased, right? So fathers do have to be more active. And if more men, that you don't have to, be the father of that child, but if more men take up a reign in that neighborhood, and in those neighborhoods, and we see different programs going up. There was a program I followed in Louisiana. These fathers,
Dad's on duty.
Dad's on duty. Wow, yeah. That was impactful. And I think when children see that you care, a lot of the times they will change their direction because they see that somebody actually care about them as a human being, just as a person. But definitely, to Erica, to your point, as far as what can parents know, or what can they do, being active, having those tough conversations, normalizing sexual behavior that these and do a little research. I think parents do need to read a little bit more, have more books in the house. I don't care if it's a little library off to the side or something like that of these different teenage books that kids can just pull out, like, and get into that behavior
Ooh, I'm
of
gonna
just,
look. That's a positive ring right there. That's a positive ring, man.
yeah, well, just,
Have books. That's
just something as simple as that, believe it or not. I mean, it's just like, where does the mind go? We know if the mind is bored, it starts to ramble. It's just going to
so.
pick up,
I think that's a bonus tip. That's a good tip, parents. You don't have to have all the answer. Go get some resources.
That's
Mhm.
it. I mean,
Use your village.
honestly, that's really, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, they got access to the internet. The access to information is crazy. So kids are better than us on social media and access to information than we are. So it was an interesting story though. I'm military, so when we went to an OSI are like investigators, and basically they showed us how to read your children's text messages because they use all these emojis and what it means.
Hmm. We did
I
it.
didn't have any kids at the time, but I was scared. Like the parents, when you see what was up there, and it would be the weirdest emojis, but it was a full sentence. And
Mhm.
the OSI people knew how to read it. So they said when you're looking at your kid's phone, you see all these funny emojis. Don't be thinking, oh, they just being silly. It's a
No.
full outgrown, conversation. And it would be about sex.
Wow.
It would be
Ah, yes.
so I knew about, eggplant and things of that nature, but they had emojis that you would be like, what? How would they get that from that?
You
But
know what? I need to have a
yeah,
segment on that. I need to have
yeah.
what does this say?
Seriously, if we can bring an OSI investigator, like, how do you know how to read this? Because they're catching predators online. Like they have these emoji
Do you know
conversations.
someone, Dr. Lay, that you can invite?
I know OSI like crazy. Yes, I can probably get one.
Yeah,
Like, hey,
bring
you mind just
somebody
coming and
around.
talk about this? Yeah, because that was so interesting. And parents was like,
Yeah, we
just,
did that with parents too once. Like how to read your child's text message, what their social media names mean, because they're using emojis instead of their actual names. So what does that mean as well? And our parents were completely enlightened that they were like, whoa, hold on. This is what she talking about? Okay, I got you.
mm.
Wow. Because you know what? They do speak a special language
Yes. Yes, they do.
that we don't understand. Because I don't speak emoji like that.
Well, and there's
But you know what, Erica? I think this is where we get in and we say, just as much we want them to learn the literature, we actually got to learn them now.
right.
Yeah,
Right?
no, I listen, I am down for learning it. I just don't know it.
Yeah.
And there's also another piece of that. I have a friend during the lockdown and all the kids being isolated. He went through something with his son, and it ended up being this movie that he did called Never Alone. And in
Okay.
one of the lines in the movie that stuck with me, one of the kids, he's talking via computer to one of his friends, or actually, he actually was sitting down with one of his parents, and he tells his parent, "We tell each other things that we don't talk to you guys about. So when you took that away from us, who am I going to talk to about those things?" So we have to realize as parents that there are conversations that we aren't privy to, that they're having amongst themselves. And some of that I think is healthy. But
Mhm.
if that's the only vehicle, if that's the only outlet they have is their peers, and the parent is totally removed, or an adult healthy role model, and I emphasize healthy role model isn't there, then that belief system, and I keep saying that belief system because that belief system is going to go sideways, and that's going to lead to those behaviors that we're dealing with.
That's, what do we want to give? What do we want to give parents to, expand their knowledge? How can we help them really get equipped on the next step to take? Because the kids are outpacing us.
In my program, I mean, I have the alpha lights, and when the parents come and pick their children up, and the first thing they ask is, how was he today? And I was like, and I would tell them, why don't you ask him, on the way home, and then let me know what kind of vocabulary would he use.
Mm,
If you hear any feeling words, not feel that, not feel like, you often hear this and be like, I feel that this is, I feel like that. Then I know they're thinking. I know they're not using true emotions, right? But I'm like, if you just hear, I feel, and then a emotional word, right? Then I know he's learning from this
Okay.
program. And so establishing that healthy boundary of just communication establishes respect for one another in dialogue. He won't think twice about not coming to you because he doesn't think you don't understand. And if he doesn't think you don't understand, me personally, I grew up in a household was like, shut up and do what I say, right? When you suppress emotions like that, you're basically saying my emotions don't matter. And that's why I say earlier, what you suppress come out in behavior. We got to act it out. You cannot pack that type of emotion in for years and think you're not going to see a behavior. So I'm telling my parents, listen, you have to get the emotions out of him. He has to, or her. They have to see that you understand them. That's the empathy, because you're understanding how one, or you're feeling as someone versus for someone. So I'm asking them, show a little empathy, show that your child is growing. They're trying to do right because they come every day. Every time we have it, they're here. So that shows that they want to do something. Show that they are doing the right thing. Reflect back to them. Hey, so you feel happy about this? This is something you want to continue with? I will support it. Something as simple as that. And leave it alone after that. You don't have to chastise, you don't have to talk. Just listen to them, and then being able to give that positive feedback, all that does is strengthen the bond between the two of them. That child starts to realize, like, okay, I actually can trust them with information, basically.
So should parents, I want to go back to this. Should parents share their failures with their children?
I would, now for me, I'm going to say yes, appropriately. Meaning, if you're sharing it, and it's just like what they teach therapists, if you're sharing it to get it off your chest, then that's not the reason you should be sharing it. If you're sharing it as a way of connecting and giving an example, then that's a whole different animal. And one of the things that I think is a tip, I can't say the easiest tip, but it's just one that I always tell parents or anyone working with youth is, at some point you have to find a way into their world. And it's almost like you have to be a detective to listen to and they'll give you clues. They'll talk about things that they're interested, or people that they're interested in. And if that's sitting at a Kids Bop concert, if that's playing Pokemon, if that's playing a video game for 30 minutes that you have no idea what you're doing and you lose every time, just find a way to get into their world for a moment. And once you do that, then you can start establishing that bond and that trust, and having those conversations are much more powerful when you do that.
Okay. So, I love me some role play. I love some role play. And I think that now would be a good time to act out a parent sharing a mistake, but going too far. Because I will tell you something that I hear and see on a regular basis is a kid trying to get out a situation, and then the parent goes, because when I was your age, da 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 da, and then they 50 feet down memory lane, and they have overstepped the bounds with the child. And I just kind of I want to see that model, but I also want to see the parent pull themselves out of it. And I want to recognize the signs, so the parents can kind of see the signs of what that looks like. Who wants to be the kid?
I can do the kid.
Okay. Oh, I'm going to have to say that's appropriate. That's appropriate because he's a guy, and we're talking about sons here. Okay. All right. So here you are, y'all. You guys are in the car. You ride home in the car. Vroom vroom. Here comes the hot stepper. Word up. The musical gangster. Word up. The radio's on.
Oh, that's what that is.
Okay. Y'all turn down the radio. Okay.
How was your day?
Just like any other day, I'm going to a school I don't want to be at, and the teachers hate me, and I just don't even know why I'm going every day. I could just stay home and learn more than I
Nobody
learned
hate
here.
you. Nobody hate you. It's all
The
in your
teacher
head.
every day calls on me, wondering if I got my homework. She don't ask nobody else if they got their homework.
Nah, see, I had this teacher that did that to me. I couldn't stand her, actually. She on my last nerve. But couldn't nobody stand her for real. She'd always ask us random questions about stuff. Wasn't nobody watching on news? Yeah, we couldn't stand her either. But anyway, your day?
Do I have to go to school? Because that's what I'm trying to figure out. I know we had just had something, but I don't know what that was.
I don't know. Yeah, you got to go to school because I went to school and that's how you're going to learn.
But
That's
I can
what
learn better.
you're not screaming in my house, eat all my food up.
But if I work, what if I got a job? I get a job and then I'll get some food and I'll eat that food.
Minimum wage
I can live on top ramen and some hot dogs.
It was $2.75 when I was your age. You could make probably about $10 an hour, but the way you eat.
Ooh, wait. Okay, pull it. Okay, pull it out. Pull it out. Turn it around. That was really good. That was really good. Okay. Reset. Rewind. Here comes the hot step. Word up. It's the musical gangster. Word up.
How was your day?
Just another one of those days. The teachers hate me. The school sucks. I don't know why I'm here. Why'd you even put me in this school?
Okay, that's a lot to unpack. You said you feel like you're hated. School sucks, and you understand why you got to be there. So let's tackle the first one about your feelings of what other people are saying about you or how they feel about you. Why do you go directly to hate?
Okay, I'll give you one perfect example. I was in class, sitting down, minding my own business, and the guy next to me asked me for a pencil. He never brings a pencil. He's always messing around. So I go in my backpack to get him a pencil, and I spill stuff out of my backpack. And all my books are out. And then the teacher yells at me and asks me how come I got all my stuff out when she told us just to get a pencil.
I wouldn't say that she hates you. She was asking a question.
But can't she see? She knows the guy next to me. She know he never has a pencil. Why don't she give him a pencil?
Okay. I'm going to say this. Adults make mistakes too. Okay. I make mistakes. You've seen me make mistakes. You can call me out on a couple of them. We're not going to go there right now. But adults make mistakes. And sometimes the fact that you are one class out of 7 class she sees in a day. What period do you see her in?
This is 6 periods, the last class.
6th period. And how are you feeling at 6th period? You still happy-go-lucky at the beginning of the day? Or are you like, man, can this just be over? Which one?
Man, can this just be over?
Man, can this be over? Do you not think that she's feeling that way too?
Well, I guess she could kind of, especially she got to deal with knucklehead next to me too every day.
There you go. So give her a little compassion, and you can always have a conversation with her and be like, hey, I felt you was a little bit harsh. You got to use your words when you're talking to her. Say, I felt you was a little harsh. Yell at me today when I was just trying to help my peer out. You got to articulate what you're saying. Just like when you tell me, Ma, I need to go to the store because I want to get this specifically because of this. That same way you're having that dialogue with me, you need to have it with them. Now, don't put no bass in your voice with it because they may take a long way. But
oh wow, that turned out so much better. The second time around,
I had to go.
She had me until don't put no bass in your voice. Once that happened, it was like, oh god.
No, you know, some of these teachers, just like you said,
it's the truth.
That bass in your voice when you with your parents is different than that bass when you with the teacher. It's like, oh, who you yelling at? Go to the office. You need to go to the ISS.
I like it. I like it.
You definitely see that empathy in there.
Yes,
that was really good.
I noticed that too. It was some reflection.
Yeah.
But was there space for the parent to share a little personal story? Because Enrique is really telling us, oh wait, that's the wrong one where he said it. But anyway, earlier he said, oh, for us to share our mistakes. with our kids. So where is the balance of us being able to share a mistake, but then create room for our child to be able to express themselves?
And I
Well, I
think
think
it's
it's teachable moments. It's that timing thing. Like I said, it's really about the reason you're sharing it than what you're sharing. Because if the
Mhm,
reason you're sharing it is just to get it off your chest, it's different than the reason I'm sharing it is to show you that this happens. And
mhm,
I think being able to say everybody makes mistakes, and this is one that I did, uh,
mhm.
and I this is what I did with it. At least I can use that, and I think a great, even if you don't have the best resolution to your mistake, then being able to share that is part of the lesson.
Mm,
I didn't have anybody to tell me then to go, hey, look, instead of doing this, you should be able to. These are your options, and here's some better options. You
okay,
had that as my child. You are going to be exposed to those things and have those options, so it can be redirected in those ways.
okay, okay.
and I think
Parents are,
it's definitely a time when it can become very taxing, I guess, in a negative way. If the response would have been, I used to experience the same thing, and it was no big deal. You just kind of dismiss your child's feelings,
Yeah.
ooh, yeah,
and
don't
being
Do.
dismiss.
right. And so, children, that's how they pick up. Like, okay, I can't go to them with this.
Right.
So if they ask what's the matter, I'm just gonna say nothing. I'm good, and keep it
Mm-hmm.
moving, right? So, but I think you do supposed to, you should share a bit of your, especially your failures or times where you struggled as well. Once you acknowledge those feelings, once you express that level of empathy, like you're feeling frustrated,
Mhm,
I've had experiences with frustration, and here's how I dealt with it.
Mm-hmm.
And what can you do differently tomorrow? Or how can you go back, with a better attitude tomorrow instead of thinking, I gotta go to this class. Well, that six period class
Yeah.
again with this teacher. You really create a dragon, a monster just in that dialogue. So I think you should share some of
mm.
just some of your background and letting them
But
know, like,
parents, yeah, parents should also don't accept that nothing answer either.
Ooh.
They
mm,
have to stop accepting nothing or it was all right.
mm,
What do you mean, all right? What happened? Tell me about, go in and start digging. You have to dig
mm,
sometimes.
So should we dig? Should we press
mhm. Oh yeah.
in the moment? Should we not give it a break?
It
It,
depends on
it
the situation,
mm.
genuinely. If
And
you
Mm,
I
just
think
had a heated argument, you might need to step away. Or if it's the general day and if you're getting that same answer every day, then press. Because there's
okay.
something going on that if you're going to get that blanket answer Monday through Monday from your child, their school day has ups and downs and different teachers and different peer interactions. And
Do you
especially if
think
they're
a
on
parent
social
should?
media.
Do you think a parent should show up at that point? Go to the
at
school
the
at that
school,
point? Yeah.
Mhm.
When you're getting that nothing and I don't know constantly, do you think that that's the key for a
I think
proper?
a parent should be able to go to school anytime at the drop of a hat, just because. Whether you're getting a no or this or that, just because you want to know what's going on, just go.
Yep.
Mhm.
and
My
and I
mama
will
dropped her all the time.
Yeah.
and
I wasn't a trouble one.
Wait a minute. Wait.
I will
Listen.
say I
Wait.
will
I'm gonna
say
play my song again. Here comes the hot stepper. Okay.
and I will say, Erica, that if you as a parent recognize that your child is frustrated, you're looking at them in the car and they look frustrated at that moment in time. I think not pressing them at that time is great, right? But the other thing I noticed too is children model behavior.
Mm.
If they don't see mom or dad handle frustration or emotional distress, they shut down or they lash out. They're picking that right up. They're
Mhm.
getting that right from home. Teachers still, I mean, especially with kids who are very young, if they start seeing behavior that's inappropriate, the first place they're going is to the home. They're going to want to find out what's going on in the home if it's happening in the school, right? So for parents do have to model whatever it is they expect of their children. There's no way you can expect your child to process and they never see you process. They see you go in the room, shut the door, You got your quiet, she must be upset. It becomes a
Wow.
norm, you know? So you got to model that behavior. To please don't ask your son or your daughter to speak up, and you know for a fact, you don't do that. That's very tough, to
Wow.
expect that,
And I
So we
think
have
the piggyback on that is don't ask them a question if you don't want the answer. Because
A real
sometimes,
answer.
yeah, they're going to give you the answer. You got to be willing to say, okay, I asked you the question. I got to let you talk and give me the answer. Because sometimes you're not going to like what you hear.
Wow, I like that. Don't always expect to like what you hear. I really like that. So, Dr. Lay has a question that he wanted to chat about, and it is, where are we missing the mark when it comes to teaching our young boys how to establish healthy relationships with their peers? Erica?
Where are we missing the mark? Mirroring healthy relationships with our own peers. That's where we're missing the mark. We go home, we gossip about Becky can't never mind her own business. She want to tell me this, or my boss is such a pain because of they always on me about working. If our behavior is the opposite of what we want our children to do or show, then how can we're missing that mark. We're saying we're in essence living the statement of do as I say and not as I do.
Okay. Okay. Nice one. Nice one. Okay. Terrence, Erica had a great question, and it is, what has been our greatest success and greatest failure when it comes to working with our youth?
I want to say it's the same answer, the internet.
Oh.
Because our greatest success has been access to information, and our greatest failure has been access to information.
Mm-hmm.
Because access to information without a qualified filter or some type of model to actually process that information in a healthy way
Mm-hmm.
is dangerous. So I think we are at a time now where have access to more information than we've ever had, and it's not gonna diminish. It's only gonna increase.
Mm-hmm.
So the responsibility to be able to assess, process, and deal with information is going to be even more important. And so that's where that modeling comes in, and that ability to have a conversation and to deal with conflicting ideas at the same time. Meaning, you're my child, but that doesn't mean you have to agree with everything that I say or that I believe in. You
Mm-hmm.
can we'll have conversations about politics, and okay, I don't like that politician, but if you do, okay, that's fine. We have to learn how to do that and model that in our microcosm, so that in society as a whole we can do that.
Mm. So I like that answer. Terrence had this question. He says, have we made our youth soft by protecting them? Have we made them soft?
Such a good question too, and I would tell you, here's what I notice. Right, our adults are having children much later. They're getting established first. When they do get established, meaning through their job, the main objective when they had kids is to give their kids what they did not have. However, the soft part comes that when it's in excess,
Mm.
when it's an overload, when it's so many options, right? On top of that, and this is so interesting, on top of that, people are having less children. There are a lot of parents, I'm one of them, that have one child, and you have two working individuals providing for one child, and everything is in excess. There is no room to struggle, if you will,
Mm-hmm.
and so we decided to restrict our daughter back when she was 2 years old. As far as birthdays, one gift, Christmas, one gift. The way we volunteer at that shelter that we go to every single year, just to have her around individuals or situations where she's like, oh, okay, there is pain in this world. And what I notice is like when young people had children and they had 2 and 3, they were all piled in one room. Everything was restricted a lot of the times. And so they grew up learning to just work for stuff, that it didn't come easy. And that probably was our Generation X, that baby boom, maybe, but now that children are getting more in access, they really don't know how to fight for something. It comes relatively easy, I think, in most cases. So, are we making them softer by overprotecting them? That is the overprotection. By giving them more access to things, not having them use critical thinking, not actually getting out there and catching bruises, if you will. Everything is just coddled. And so I think we are, in some ways overprotecting our children, to whereas when they get out there and get in that real world, I mean, let's just face it, with men, we lead the nation in suicide. We lead the nation in domestic violence. We lead the nation in homelessness. We lead the nation in prison population. We lead the nation in so many different categories. And yet women outnumber us 2 to 1 in this society. And we're leading in all of these different things because I think that the pressure that is on us as adults is not on us as children. We're coddled during that time. And when we get out there, the world will quickly show us where we're going to end up at, if we do not make the right decisions. And so I think, if we take a step back and just kind of go back to those, I know we talked about modern men, right? But I think those traditional norms that used to regulate, because those traditional norms were that it was regulation. And it was something that Terrence said in reference to social media. If we have more regulation, that, social media and having access to information is great. But with regulation, it would have been used as a good social tool. But now, because it's so careless, yeah, without a doubt.
Well, what's the traditional norm that you want to keep?
Well, you already mentioned, right, to provide and protect. That's very traditional. Now, you cannot ask an individual to develop that type of traditional role with a modern ideology. Does not work. It's one or the other you're going to be going for. Okay, so
when I say modern, what I mean is fully developed character, identity, and self-esteem. I don't mean soft. And so you, a person who believes in emotional intelligence, I think that you actually agree with me. I think that it is modern to grow, define yourself beyond provide, protect, and sexual conquest. Quite honestly, I think it is suffocating and crippling to only be defined by those 3 things.
Right. So I'm speaking to the soft part in the modern. When I use modern, I'm talking about the way we are asked to perform now. It's confusing with traditional norms or traditional values. It does not, carry over, I guess you would say, or whatever word you want to use for that. But it's men are not complex creatures, right? And so we need interaction, without a doubt. We need interaction of men, for the most part. But as we get into that adulthood and they say, hey, how are we taking accountability? How are we teaching our boys to take accountability, right? The level of empathy that I refer to is being able to understand another person's feelings, being able to respect another person's feelings. That there is modern way of thinking, right? That is now, I don't have to come out here with this machoism and try to conquer someone. You're absolutely right, right? So yes, you will have to take that initiative, I think, from an adult standpoint, show them at a younger age, not just have them have access to everything. I'm gonna give them everything I never had. That's everything from the 90s. None of us, we didn't have the internet in the 90s. So when you say you're giving them everything you never had, what does that actually mean? And I think to Terrence's point, are we overprotecting? Are we making them soft in that matter? I think it's because those values that was taught to us, I think in addition to empathy, in addition to emotional intelligence, in addition to exposure to different diversity, I'm shocked to learn that so many people never left their cities, you know, um, to just see something different in another state or whatever
Mhm.
have you. And so I think exposure hits a big part, not just through internet, but just out meeting people, communicating, growing. So to answer Terrence's question, I think that overprotecting them is giving them too much access with no regulation. And it's something that we have to get back to those traditional. I think those traditional norms do matter. We can't jump to this modern way without them seeing, okay, the things that come natural to me, how do I regulate that? How does it make sense to me? How do I still feel competent and confident when I go out there in society and I'm not going to be bashed for it? But in both aspects, the level of what we're showing from an emotional standpoint, I myself, what I'm seeing from boys, they're responding well to it. It does get in the way to come to my program to feel good about it and to go back into a society where it's not practiced. And
I'm
so
going to say
mm,
that we need to take a cue from nature, and I'm going to bring it to a butterfly.
mm,
Butterflies are in that cocoon,
Mhm.
and if you cut them out too soon, trying to free them and do them a favor, you will prevent them from being able to fly. They will not be strong enough to fly. So
mm,
they have to develop that muscle, that push within that cocoon. They have to have that struggle in order to be able to be the beautiful creature that they are truly meant to be. And that's what we have to do. We have to find that balance as parents and leaders. So what I'm going to ask for is just one tip. We've given some fabulous tips here tonight, but I just want one clear tip that we want to leave our audience with. And I am going to start with Terrence, and we're going to end with Erica. Okay. All right, Terrence, here you go.
So for me, the key tip, and I'm a big student and fan of leadership and love. So my one main one would be love. If you can respond through that, and it sounds like a phrase, but it really is the hardest thing to do sometimes, because that skill to be able to not only love yourself, love the people that you're dealing with, love your enemy, love all of these people, and respond and react and act from that place is a very hard thing to do. Not successful all the time, but that is where I try to come from. And I can tell if I'm coming from there, if I'm not. You can tell the energy on it when you respond or act on something. So for me, that clue is become a student of that, learn that, teach that, be that, and that will allow you to model the types of behaviors that you want to teach to your children and to children, other people's children, because you don't live in a vacuum. Other people's children are going to be coming through your home, or coming through your place of work, or seeing you in stores. So that whole village mentality, we have to take responsibility for ourselves, be the best us that we can be, so that we can teach it and model it for others.
I love it. I love it. I love it. Okay, Dr. Leg.
man, Terrence stole my. That's, all right. So, so I think that is so interesting in reference to parents. Whatever you want your child, or whatever you envision your child to be, if you want them to be a good communicator, if you want them to have compassion, if you want them to have empathy, if you want them to have integrity and accountability for themselves, they have to be able to see it on a daily basis. So without a doubt, I think showing your children how it's supposed to be is the best, I think, education that you can give or pass down, if you will, to your offspring, to your children. Okay, so that they can go out into society and do the exact same thing. When it comes to communication of your child, being an active listener is going to be key to whatever it is they're going to be talking about, whatever it is you want to know. I think we said and agreed earlier that there are some things we're just not going to want to hear. But if children learn to trust that you will accept them for how they process information, I think that opens the gateway, the floodgates to them having a healthy conversation, communication with you. Thus, they're going to mimic that same behavior to others.
That's a good one. That's a good one. Okay, Erica.
You guys kind of took some of mine. I was thinking, but my main one I would say is be consistent and flexible and willing to change your parenting style. Don't go off of what you've been taught all along or what you see on TV, but be flexible to fit your individual child, because each child that's in your house is different. My mom raised one girl, three boys, and how she parented each one of us is distinctly different. And we talk about it to this day, because I always say she was easy on the boys than me, but still change. Yeah, she was. Be flexible and willing to change, because it's necessary to get your child the things they need so that they know love and what love looks like, and they know how to mirror behavior that changes and is adaptable to their environment. And as my peers have stated before, open to have that conversation, because you got to be flexible to have that conversation, because like they said, they're going to say some stuff you're not going to like, but being flexible and not staying rigid is key. You got to kind of be like bamboo. Bamboo bends with the wind. It doesn't break.
I love it. I love it. I love it. Perfect, perfect, perfect. And mine is use your resources. Use your resources. You're not going to know all the answers, but call a friend, read a book, become part of a community so that you can grow. I am so thankful for you guys spending time with us tonight on another episode of Epic Understanding. I promise you, we're going to keep doing it. We're going to keep hanging out together, and we are going to keep growing together. But until next time, bye-bye for now. You're winning.